Imagine you and your love find yourselves under a big shady tree on a warm summer evening. You look into their eyes and begin to feel a seething rage towards them. Your blood is boiling, and unbeknownst to you, so is theirs. You lose it and suddenly can't stand them anymore. You're too mad even to wonder why. An evil tree djinn cackles from above at your misfortune that they have just caused. Your relationship may never recover. Welcome to Below the Forest Floor. My name is Nancy and I'm here with my husband/co-host Ryan.
Hello.
Today we will be talking about the terrifying creature called a djinn. So before I go any further, what do you know about djinns?
I've heard, anybody who's seen Supernatural knows of the djinn that was in it. There's that. There's the genie side of things. There's different characters in different video games, especially that are probably on varying sides of the spectrum when it comes to all the different forms of this. Warcraft have them that are kind of like their feet and legs are almost like a cloud, and then like their upper half looks like what you'd expect a genie from like Aladdin and everything to look like.
That's pretty
those
cool.
those are the kinds that I've seen, and then the name gets tossed around synonymous with some are interchanged with like the Egyptian magi, which I know that's way far away from what it actually is, but not too many things, but I know some. I've seen some at least.
Cool. So not going into this one completely blind like we have before in certain topics.
Yeah.
But that was pretty spot on a lot of things that I found in my research.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's good to know that some of these like role-playing games and things do their research as well.
Like, here's the thing. I did forget to put in the part about the clouded feet situation because there was just so much information. I ended up with 9 pages of script and completely forgot to add that in there. But yes, that is something I did read throughout my mounds and mounds of research.
Well, there we go. We've still been able to add it.
I know. Oh my gosh. Tell me about it. So you're not completely wrong. And yeah, they are also known as genies. It's like a class of them, but we'll get into that later.
Okay.
So djinns are some of the most dangerous creatures in mythos. They are demons. This particular demon spans multiple religions, from Islam to Christianity. Causing harm and destruction to those in their path, djinns are mostly to be feared and avoided at all costs. They genuinely like to hurt people, especially if people have accidentally or purposefully hurt them first.
Yeah, very spiteful.
Mm-hmm. The temper is immense. They can cause sandstorms, water spouts, shapeshift into different animals / spiritual beings like saints. They can mate with humans to create hybrids, and some can even cause loved ones to hate each other, like I mentioned earlier in that little story. That's not to say that there are not good djinns. Even if so, they are all said to be extremely terrifying to encounter.
Oh, I bet. It really sounds like it. And you'll definitely know if you did.
Oh boy, we sure will get into that. According to IslamQA.info, these demons were given the name djinn because it comes from the Arabic root jana, referring to a single original meaning, which is to cover and conceal.
Ah.
When in their natural form, they travel the world completely invisible to the naked eye. If allowed to be seen in their demonic form, they are said to have blackened hooves for feet and almost completely resemble a satyr.
Oh, yeah.
Though they do prefer to travel mostly as snakes and scorpions amongst humans, they can conceal themselves as other animals as well, like cats, birds, and when I say birds, I don't mean just little birds, ostriches, and dogs. Those are just some to name a few. One of the most...
Oh, sorry, I was
No,
gonna
you're
say,
fine.
so kind of like that might be where the the like magician and mage aspect has come into different, I don't want to say folklore because that's not what I'm trying to say, but like
I mean, you wouldn't be wrong.
yeah, okay. Like some of the different stories of like things that they can do and stuff like that. A lot of the ones that I've seen, especially, and the ones that are talked about in certain video games and things like that, they always had this like sense of magic about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that might be why.
And honestly, when you say stuff like that, it just reminds me of more and more things that I didn't even think about in that moment, because what I read about Djinn, there are so many varieties of them that they could be almost any terror that we've heard of in society in general.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've already gotten to the point where we're talking about how they're both genies and demons. So that's already two different areas completely covered. And demons already are like a huge part of the spooky world.
Yeah.
So one of the most terrifying shape-shifting skills that they have is to turn themselves into a human. They do this when they want to get close to other humans and possibly mate with them, or to trick them. Like, some djinns have been known to even shapeshift into saints to get people to follow their word.
Huh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Which reminded me, when I was writing that part, it was like, you know what that kind of sounds like? Cult leaders.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, most definitely.
Pretending to be someone that cares about people and take advantage of vulnerable people.
Let's be honest. Throughout history, that's been a big thing, and it's been very easy for some groups to do.
Really is. So if you encounter a djinn, it's because it wants you to see it. According to religious texts like the Quran, djinn were one of 3 beings created at the beginning of time. The other 2 were angels and humans. Humans were made from clay. Djinn were born of smoke and fire, and are said to have fire within their veins rather than blood. And angels were created from light.
So almost like an elemental aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Because they weren't made from earthly materials, both angels and djinn have supernatural speed that time cannot constrain, and they use this to travel wherever they please, whenever they choose to do so. Something that may sound familiar to theology fans out there is angels and djinn once held a holy battle in which the djinn lost, and one particular djinn named Azazel was captured by the angels and raised as one of their own. He became such a prominent part of the angels' inner circle that he was able to climb the ranks to leader. Eventually, Azazel became resentful of God's demands of blind worship, and he began to disobey commands.
I remember hearing the story.
Oh yeah, because it's in the Christian Bible, and most of us growing up were raised Christian in our households. This angered God, and he cast Azazel out of heaven. Yep, you guessed it, this sounds like the Christian devil, which is technically classified as a djinn, because in the Islamic writing for Satan, it's shaitan, Shyatain.
Oh, okay.
So Satan, that word derives from that word.
It's all coming together.
Thanks, Kronk. Like, that's literally what I was thinking when I was reading and writing all this out, because I remember the other night I was telling Ryan about this, and I was like, I feel like that meme of Charlie from It's Always Sunny, where he's like standing in front of this giant board with strings attached.
Oh yeah. the theory board.
Yeah, because this is like, I was like, wait a second, what? Wait a second, who? Wait a second, huh? This is like just so much to process, you know?
Uh-huh.
So I think it's just really interesting regarding all the stories I heard growing up about the devil's appearance, because the way that my family talked about his powers was a lot like what I was hearing about the djinn. So I was just like, I was freaking out because the parallels were insane.
Yeah.
So, disclaimer for what I'm about to say. And when I say that my family has had a lot of interesting run-ins with the supernatural, I do also include this being. And the only reason I feel comfortable bringing it up now is because we do believe that after a certain incident we had a few years ago, which Ryan would remember, we feel like my dad's spirit has finally moved on after that day. So, and no, I'm not saying it this way to sound mysterious. We've just had a lot of incidents where bad things would happen if I posted certain supernatural experiences my family had on Below the Forest Floor, and I've ended up having to take those episodes down to make the bad stop. Yeah, so just something interesting. And another interesting thing to point out, when I was writing this part about my dad, my mom called me and it freaked me out. I was not expecting that at all. So Ryan was there. It was just like a really creepy coincidence. So, growing up, my dad would talk about his experiences having met the devil several times. Each time he said that he would appear to him in an expensive-looking suit and was extremely good-looking. Definitely the kind of person who would charm people into following him.
Yep.
My dad was into black magic, along with my grandparents, and he knew it was only a matter of time before he met the devil. So he said he went willingly when he was offered a ride in an incredible-looking vehicle by this demon. He took him through what seemed like a timeline of his future. My father says that he saw himself meeting my mom in the place where they did end up meeting. He was taken by the place where he ended up having my brother and I and watched us grow and those kinds of things when going with this man on this trip, which I thought was interesting because we did speak earlier about how djinns can travel through any time constraint because time cannot constrain them.
Yeah, there's no restrictions.
Pretty much. And I thought this was, when I was writing that earlier, I thought that was really interesting when I remember my dad telling me this story when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So he did end up going back on, he made a deal with the devil, first of all, and he denounced Christianity. He did end up going back on his decision when he ended up having my brother and I. He started worshiping the Christian God to pray for protection for our family from the evil that he had brought into it, but it was too late. He ended up becoming the evil in our lives, and with the deal broken, basically, he did end up leaving this world sooner than he had anticipated. It was all very sudden and quite horrific of a death that was intense to watch happen in real time, as I was there every step of the way. Then, not too long after that, my grandmother's husband, who was extremely close with my father and was one of the people that would do the black magic with him, started seeing things and talking to things in the room, saying that it was the devil and stuff like that. And one night he wandered off and he also had a tragic and horrific death. So far, oh, and also before I move forward, it was also in the same month that my dad had passed back when it was his time. So,
yep.
But we didn't find him till months later, but when he went missing was when it was that same month.
It was that same month, yeah.
So far, none of my family members have passed peacefully of natural causes at old age at all. Every single one of my family members that has passed so far has passed in a very horrific, tragic way. That may have more to do with the family curse, though, that I had to take down a while back because of some stuff, but who knows? So another family story of djinns includes my dad's uncle from Mexico. Before we move too far into the story, I did want to add that this was set sometime between the 20s and the 30s in rural Mexico. My dad was born in the late 40s and his uncle was very old by that time. In this story, his uncle is still a young man, so this is way back before a lot of modern technology. One day while my dad's uncle and his band were playing their instruments in the streets, they were scouted by a very rich man to play at a party. The man paid up front, gave my dad's uncle the address, and told him to be there that night. And this man gave them a lot of money. They split it up and stuffed all the money into their pockets, and later that night, they were on their way. When they got to the address in the middle of almost nowhere, they saw a huge towering mansion that looked extremely old. One that none of them had ever seen before or even heard of existing, which is strange in small town rural Mexico because everybody knows everybody and everybody's family with everyone.
Yeah, it's just like most small towns.
So they walk in and see hundreds of guests mingling in beautiful attire and having a great time. They get excited because it looks like a great gig. They begin to make their way towards the stage when a young woman steps in their way. "What are you doing here?" she asks. The men stop and realize they recognize her as an old friend from the village. "Wow, it's been so long since we've seen you. How have you been?" He then realizes they have no idea what they've just gotten themselves into. "You are not supposed to be here. Leave right now before it's too late, or you won't be able to go back home." The men looked at each other in confusion and turned back to her and asked her what she meant. "Look down at the guests' feet and you'll know." This woman was too afraid to say out loud what was happening, or maybe she couldn't. So when the men looked down, they saw a sea of hooved furry feet and chicken claws stemming from the bottom of dresses and pant legs. They get ready to run and ask the young woman to follow them. That's when she tells them how she knows what's going on. "I am not of your world anymore. It's too late for me. But leave now or stay here for all of eternity with me." The men ran out of the mansion and into the darkened streets of Mexico. They run until they can no longer see the house of horrors. They reach into their pockets, happy to have at least have gotten paid in advance, and find nothing but maggots where the money had been.
That's really creepy. I remember you've told me that.
These were the stories my dad would tell me when I was 5.
Yeah, I remember when you had told me that one.
Yep. So guys, not too surprising that I run below the forest floor now, is it?
It's a perfect match.
Oh my god, tell me about it. I was raised to create this podcast. And he would tell me the story every time, word for word, exactly the same. There was never any different way he would say it, and it was one of those things where if you hadn't been hearing the story your whole life, you wouldn't be able to retell it. Although a majority of djinn are evil, there are some that can be helpful as well. For example, like Ryan mentioned earlier, there are genies, just like from Aladdin, and they are a class of djinn. They usually give assistance in the form of allowing humans to make wishes. Those humans must be very careful with how they state their wishes, though. Genies can often use literal translations, causing more harm than good, even if that's not their intention.
Yeah, what's the phrase called? It's like the monkey's paw.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. For example, if you want $100 of whatever currency you choose,
Don't say $100.
I was about to say that.
Don't say $100.
You'll
be trampled by a bunch of deer.
Did you read what I wrote?
No. That's one that I've always known. I've always heard. It's always been just a thing for me.
Yep. You can't just say something like you want $100, because that could result in 100 male deer appearing and trampling you to death. Which,
or like the
Animaniacs even made a joke about that.
So did Johnny Bravo.
Really?
Where he's like, he wants, what was it? He wished for, him to be irresistible to chicks,
Oh
and it
my
was just
god, I
like
remember.
a million chickens just like, let's get him, girls, and they're chasing after him.
I had forgotten about that episode till right now,
And
and it just
then
had a flashback in my brain.
the entire movie of Bedazzled, the Brendan Fraser movie.
I don't think I've seen that one.
We'll have to watch that one. Anybody that's listening here, if you've seen it, you know.
Well, I don't know. So, could you tell me something about it?
I really want to be able to watch it with you, but
Aw.
basically it's the same thing. It's like, being very cautious about the wording of wishes, because there's always got to be something that could be wrong with it. Like, what was a movie, The Puppet Master, also, where they did the same things?
Oh, the only thing I remember about Puppet Masters is it being an awful looking movie and the very gentle stabs that were like, oh god, he's stabbing her, and it looks
Oh no,
like
I'm thinking of I'm thinking of
Okay.
a different one.
Okay, I
There's a
was
different
like,
one
that
was
movie
that.
sucked.
Wishmaster.
Okay,
Wishmaster.
that
was
makes
the
more
one.
sense. Which, by the way, I kind of want to read that Monkey's Paw book by Stephen King now. It's been a while.
Oh yeah.
But genies don't do this to be harmful on purpose. Think of it this way. They're just so ancient that most have no sense of the changing vocabulary in society or slang.
Very literary.
Literal?
I was gonna say literary, and then I was like, wait.
Yeah, they're
a
very
minute.
book-like.
Yeah, it's good. Okay. To be fair, they probably are. They're probably very well read. Just
Very textbook,
all
if you will.
old. Yeah, they're old school.
So they're honestly the more benign versions of Djinn. They're ones that you can kind of trust, but if you're very bad at putting your words together, like some people, I would say it's a 4 out of 10 because and on the danger scale, because you could get yourself in trouble. But like I said, you'd get yourself in trouble by doing that. There are other Djinns as well, though. There are Djinns that almost act like nymphs. I'm not sure if you've heard anything about that.
Not that one, but I know of some of them.
Yep.
Nymphs in general.
Yeah, that some people first categorized what they thought were Djinns as nymphs, or back in the day they used to be like, oh, they're just nymphs, but it turns out like they decided that they were actually Djinns. Just Djinns that hung out in the same places that nymphs did. For example, tree Djinns. Tree Djinns hide in trees and wait for people to sit underneath with their loved ones. Then they cause them to fight with each other and cause misfortune in their relationship, like I mentioned in that little story earlier that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Which honestly kind of makes me wonder if that's what happened with the whole Adam and Eve thing now that I think about it.
And the same thing also is nymphs are considered to be like they have a very, very kind disposition towards men, and the same way with like some Djinns are explained of being kind of really close to people, like humans, and kind of okay with breeding with them.
Yeah, pretty much. And the thing is, like, most Djinn, and I'm gonna get to this part more in depth later, but really quickly, most Djinn are only supposed to mate male Djinn with female humans, but Djinns tend to appear to people in general as women to get close to them.
Yeah.
So, you're not exactly too far off with what you're saying with the whole nymph thing.
I just thought that might have been why sometimes they were just like classified a little wrongly there.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, a lot of this sounds like classification's gone awry, because it sounds like maybe these ideas were gotten from nymphs, and because those are even older than Djinn, and then they turned into Djinn, and then of course went from the Djinn to the devil, and etc. and so far.
Yeah, because nymphs were basically like they were primarily in Greek mythology that were they were like female divinities.
Yeah, and honestly, before Islam got a hold of Djinns, they were known as divine creatures And then
Oh,
in
would you
it,
look at that?
yeah, and then when Islam started learning about them, they were like, well, if this isn't Islam and Christianity, they were like, if it isn't angels and God, then they're just something evil.
Yeah, yeah. There's actually some other um religions that kind of see anything besides the black and white side
Mm-hmm.
as, where if it's not this one thing, that it's just a demon, doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And speaking of nymphs, there are also water djinns, just like there are water nymphs.
Yes.
They thrive anywhere there is water. And I mean anywhere. From my research, of course, they can be found in rivers and ponds.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But they can even be found in your own toilet.
Kind of reminds me of that one, there was a Japanese demon, the
Yeah.
poop demon or whatever.
The girl that hangs out in the stalls, the stall demon.
That one too.
Oh my god. And you know what's freaking hilarious about that? When I read that, it reminded me of this thing that used to happen when I was a kid, because my dad would tell me about La Llorona, and he would be like, "But La Llorona's gonna get you if you don't go to sleep, right?" And I'd be like, "Well, where is she?" And he's like, "Well, she's down by the river by Zapata's house." And I was like, "Well, he's a few blocks away, so I think I'm fine." Because I was just like, I was a sassy little child.
Right.
And he was like, "But she can go anywhere there's water." And then my child brain goes, "Even the toilet?" He goes, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And so, just to get me to shut up and leave him alone and go to sleep.
But he was right.
According to this, he was not wrong. So that's just when I read the toilet part, it just reminded me of that. So there are also earth djinns that hide in deserts and are the reason behind deadly sandstorms, according to ancient Arabic texts. Something strange about this creature in comparison to others we've discussed in the past is that it can have intercourse with humans. In most, I know, in most religious texts, female djinns are not to have intercourse with human men, but a bond between a male djinn and a human female can result in children, and that is an extremely common thing that happens. The hybrid children of these interactions will always have powers and will have the ability to shapeshift, just like the djinn, the father djinn, and they are born with slitted pupils, like goats and cats and stuff like that when, the sun hits them.
Yeah.
But they also have the ability to walk through walls.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And the slitted pupils are kind of like a marking. It's to indicate that this child that has been born is not fully human.
Okay.
But besides being able to breed with humans, they can also choose to possess the bodies of those who have upset them or harmed them in some way. They can only be removed by a religious exorcism and have been known to harm the body they inhabit if not taken care of immediately.
Oh, dang.
So let's talk about that really quickly. As somebody, we both grew up in very religious homes in one way or another. Your aunt was the religious one, though.
Yeah.
Everyone around me was religious.
Well, yeah, there were other things, but I'll just leave that because I
Yeah.
don't want to go into it.
That was the most prominent one that we spoke about. But regarding that, we have been taught that, an exorcism is needed when a demon enters a person's body, correct?
Yeah.
But nobody's ever said what the demon was called or what it is or how it came to be or why it's existing, because some people just say it's ghosts that are mad.
Yeah. That's definitely something I've heard from multiple people.
What if it's not just an angry ghost or spirit? What if it's this?
Because they aren't seen unless they absolutely want to be. Like,
and they can still do stuff.
Most ghosts nowadays could technically just be considered a djinn if you want to go far enough. Because if you think about it, it's like something you can't see, can still affect the things around it. A lot of people that go to a place, yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs to get them to show themselves, and they don't. It's
Mm-hmm.
just because they didn't want to.
Yeah.
Why would they give you the time of the day? Especially because it kind of sounds like, with a lot of stories I've seen, is that they kind of sound like a little bit of pompous dicks at times
Which
too.
honestly, with the powers they have, they can be as pompous as they fucking wanna be. Like, what are we gonna do about it, honestly?
But yeah, please continue. And after this segment, before we move on to the next bit, I have a question for you about
Ooh,
this.
ooh, spooky. Well, wait, is it for the podcast or is it something after the podcast you want to talk to me about?
No. This is during the
Oh, okay,
podcast
okay.
because
Oh, let's
it has to do
go.
with Djinns. I wanted to ask you a question for it because it also kind of lines up something maybe extra later on to go into.
Oh, really now?
Yeah.
Exciting. So that was just my idea that I thought of right now as I was reading it, because it was one of those basically in my head chicken or the egg situation, or the chicken or the egg situations. But I feel like in this situation, it sounds like a lot of ghostly incidences can be attributed to djinns, especially with the fact that people are like, once you die, you die. You go to another world, or all you see is darkness. You don't come back. It's like, okay, then what is causing all of this? If that were true, like, to entertain the idea that that's a possibility. If ghosts aren't the ones doing this, what is, and what has the power to do this? And this text goes back as far as the 14th century that they have these powers. So these can be djinns. And djinns just like annoying people in general and bothering them. So you can imagine you say something really rude about a djinn thinking it's a ghost or something, and he just gets really mad, and he just wants to make your life hell. He has all the time in the world to just do whatever.
And another thing on top of that is, the stories of like the where there's been stories of an angry ghost following a person back home. Just like kind of a little bit of that too. That's in line with what the nature is of a djinn.
Oh my god, I just had
being very spiteful.
I just had a dumb thought.
Probably not a dumb thought, probably something I've already thought of. What's up?
Okay, so I'm gonna finish this text because right after this text, it's basically the closing thoughts, and then it's the end of the episode. So I'm gonna finish this text, and then we'll do our closing thoughts with my silly thought.
Well, also give me the floor for the...
I'll give you the heads up in a sec. So although djinns are still a popular scare tactic used even in video games of today, like Phasmophobia, there has been text regarding their existence as far back as the 14th century and in pre-Islamic Arabia.
What stuff happened in the 14th century? I'm curious.
That was like when parchment paper and like squared off drawings was still a thing. Like the easiest way for me to describe a visual of that time.
Okay, yeah.
So, of course, back then, talks of djinns basically started like all spooky stories do, to explain the unexplainable, like sandstorms, issues with water. There was a problem. A djinn did it.
Yeah.
So, personally, I think a lot of that could just be attributed to human ignorance, as most things can, but...
Right.
Do you want to say your idea first, or do you want to hear my silly thought first?
Give me your silly thought, then we'll do this one.
I'm a little embarrassed, but here it goes.
It's okay. Mine will help you with it. Okay.
So you know how we're basically discussing the possibility of ghosts not really existing, like them being djinns.
Yeah.
And you know how people say that, like, if you go to certain places like battlefields, you'll see ghosts just going in circles doing the same thing they did when they died. I'm like, what if it's djinns that just really enjoyed that era and they're just like playing?
Yeah, right. That was actually, I don't remember where it was that I heard it, but someone from, I think it was one of the TV shows that was about like, ghost hunting and stuff, where they're basically saying, it's like, well, what if this ghost isn't actually, reliving the time? What if he just kind of like misses that time?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, how people have reenactment kind of get-togethers for like the Civil War or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, what if that's what the Djinns are doing? They have so much time on their hands. What if they're bored and they're just doing reenactments and they're like, charge! And they're like, we're doing it again tomorrow, guys? Like, yeah, see you later, Craig.
Okay, so really quickly, before I get into that other thing, I got one other thing.
Oh,
I'm just
God.
gonna show you this picture. Look over here real
Okay.
quick. You calling that a demon?
Why does he have the chin of Bruce Campbell?
I just sent her a funny genie looking picture. But okay, so
It's just a blue man in a ponytail.
basically, yeah. Okay, so going in the vein of Pokemon, all right? The forces of nature, you know, Tornadus,
I was about to say that.
Landorus,
Thundurus.
Thundurus, that was it. And with Pokemon Legends Arceus, there was Enamorus. I don't think you ever got a chance to see that one yet, though, have you?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it basically looks like the other ones, except it's pink. It has a snake wrapped around its neck and its body, and it has like a heart above its head. Because it's the emotion.
Oh, that's cute. I love
But
it.
all of them in their what is it, incarnate form?
Mhm.
Yeah, incarnate forms. They have a striking resemblance to what you've seen portrayals of as with Djinns.
Right, right.
So are they Djinns? Could they have been Djinns? Were they just a complete
You're making me think. What generation did they come out in of Pokemon? Because
black and white?
okay, so if I remember correctly, which I may not because it's been a bajillion years since then, when I played Black and White, that was when I got my first shiny, and I was shiny hunting. Well, I wasn't shiny hunting. I was walking around a desert area because there was a big prominent desert area in Black and White.
Yep. And it was funny thing that you mentioned the whole 14th century thing. Do you know what some of the big, if I looked it up, some of the big events that happened in the 14th century? One of them was what was that person's name? It's something to do with France. What was it again? Hold on a second.
Okay. Which is weird because I looked it up and Unova is supposed to be like reminiscent of the New York area, but it's got huge rural sandy areas that look like you're in the Middle East.
But that's the thing. Unova was not supposed to be like New York or anything like that. It was supposed to be France.
Really?
Because
on Bulbapedia it says it's supposed to be reminiscent of New York.
That's why you're not supposed to follow Bulbapedia. I'm sorry if you guys like Bulbapedia, but Bulbapedia is not the Pokemon.
If you guys
thing like
if any of you, because not everybody of our listeners is a fan of video games. If you don't know what that is, Bulbapedia is basically Wikipedia for Pokemon people.
Okay, so Isabella of France was received at Paris in the 14th century. That was one of the big major events. And you were talking about how there's a big connection between France and Djinns if we're thinking of the way of like this Pokemon thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you were saying that they, like, stories of them have even dated back since the 14th century?
Even further back. Because they've
even further back.
Since
Okay,
before some religions, like before Islam.
Wow.
They're ancient.
I saw.
Yeah.
But yeah, Black and White was supposed to be, because Unova is right on the other side of where what is the one that's from Scarlet and Violet called? What was that freaking region? Because that's supposed to be Spain and Portugal. Mm-hmm. And then they were saying like in the upper right hand corner of the map is that little area, and then on the other side of it is Unova. Right on the other side of that area in the real world is France.
Really?
Yeah.
But what does France have to do with this?
I can't remember now.
This is hilarious. It's like I figured it out. What? I don't know.
Well, because I remember that because I was talking about the whole Pokemon thing. Was what it started.
That's what those look like Djinns, but I still didn't understand how you were so.
Oh, because you had asked about when you mentioned the whole 14th century thing. I started looking up what like major events might have happened around that time, just so I can get like a
Hmm.
picture of, what the world was like at that time.
Right.
And like some of the major things that happened, apparently a lot of them happened in France, and I guess that's what made me.
But okay, speaking of that, okay, let's say we're going to follow this little rabbit hole where it's going. So a lot of major events happened in France, but that was also around the time where like written text was getting super popular, which means that was around the time where people started writing about djinns, which could be djinns getting all pissy about the fact that people were starting to write about them. They're starting to tell the world about them. Why not start just chaos, especially in one of the places that was most popular at the time?
Yeah, interesting.
But don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, it's just
I just put on
it's fun.
I just put on my little
It's fun
tinfoil hat.
theory. Yeah, it's fun theory crafting.
Yeah, because we said all of the important stuff. We said we talked about basic origins. We talked about how it was pre-Islamic, how it was basically explanations for bad things happening like sandstorms. We talked about how it affected religion and reality for some people, and so why not put a little tinfoil hat on at the end and be like, let's get kooky.
And djinns are in a lot of video games, like on other than just the ghosts and Phasmo being a djinn, like that.
Mm-hmm.
I even forgot about that, but I've thought
You
about
forgot about that?
that one, yeah.
Wow.
But I'm thinking more along the lines of like the wind elementals that are in World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
They are all what you would expect a djinn to look like, the genies,
Right.
clouded feet. Then there is the Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering there are so many blue cards that are all different forms of djinns.
What?
Yep.
Holy crap, that's incredible.
I actually have some of them in the blue-red deck. There's one that's called the Djinn Illuminatus.
Ooh.
And it gives all of your spells replicate, which makes it so you basically just, when you play the card, you pay whatever you paid for that card again and again and again and again, and every single time that you have enough mana to spend that, you basically get to copy that card for every single time you can do that.
Well, that sounds like the chaos of a djinn. So. Well, whether djinns are real or not, they are welcome down here with us below the forest floor. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did, because this one was a trip.
Right.
We'd like to give a shout out to our forest deity patron, Lotus Vincent. If you would like a shout out at the end of our episodes and you would like to help support the podcast, make sure to check us out on patreon.com/belowtheforestfloor for more details. And if you guys like hanging out with us or like listening to the things we have to say about spooky stuff, hop on over to our Twitch, because we are Twitch streamers as well, and we just hit 80 followers last night. Let's go! I'm so freaking excited and proud of us. We are affiliates, so every follow and viewer matters, and we are Esterloon and Metriel on Twitch. That's our gamer tags and stuff like that. And we will put a link in our description for Spotify. So if you guys want to just go say hi, we are going to be live later tonight, and we're usually live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays.
Yeah, the schedule might be changed up soon, depending on how things go. But
But as of right now, as of today, this is kind of what we have in mind. So yeah, if you guys want to go just pop on in and say hi, feel free to do so. We love hanging out with everybody.
Yeah, I love just sitting. Sometimes we just sit around and talk with people, even if we're just playing a game or something. We try to talk to everybody that's in there, because it's a lot of fun being able to communicate with people online.
Yep. So we will see you all later in the next episode. Have a nice night. Bye.
Bye.